Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. It was a regular Thursday afternoon, the kind of day that drags along without anything exciting happening. I was at my desk, going through some invoices for my business, already thinking about what I'd make for dinner. Something quick, something easy. Then my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Probably another email, maybe a spam message. But when I glanced at the screen, my stomach twisted. Veronica. I hesitated. For some reason, my hands felt heavier when I picked up the phone. A part of me already knew this wasn't going to be a regular message. I tapped the screen. "I'm leaving, Eric. I'm moving to California with Brandon. I've taken what I need from our accounts. It's over." I read it twice. Then again, just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. Brandon. The name lingered in my mind like a bad taste. The just a friend, Brandon. The one she always insisted I was paranoid about. I should have felt something. Rage, heartbreak, betrayal. But instead, there was just silence. A strange, hollow kind of stillness. Then another message popped up. "Oh, and I hope you don't mind, but I booked our joint credit card for the trip." A little parting gift to myself. I let out a slow breath, staring at the screen. That's how 10 years of marriage ended? With a text message? No conversation, no face-to-face honesty. Just cold words on a screen. I glanced around the office, at the desk covered in paperwork, at the framed picture of us from our honeymoon sitting in the corner. A picture I had stopped looking at months ago. I wasn't sad, not anymore, because deep down, I had seen this coming. I remembered the first signs, the late nights, the way she stopped looking at me like she used to. At first I ignored them, brushing them off as nothing. Later I realized they were warnings, red flags I had been too willing to excuse. I should have confronted her sooner, but part of me had wanted to believe that maybe I was wrong, that maybe she wasn't capable of something like this. Turns out I had been giving her too much credit. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my jaw. Veronica thought she had won. She had no idea that she had just walked straight into my game. I stared at the message for a moment before typing my reply. "Safe travels." That was it. No questions, no anger, just 2 words. I imagined her sitting there staring at the screen, waiting for more, expecting me to blow up, expecting me to beg. But silence was louder than any argument. I shifted in my seat, drumming my fingers against the desk. I could almost see her now, checking her phone, expecting a reaction, maybe even enjoying the idea of me breaking down. That's what she wanted, to feel powerful, to leave on her terms. She had no idea. What she thought she had taken, the so-called joint account, was only a fraction of what we had. She believed she had drained everything. Sure, she had access to the joint account and had been spending from it for months, but what she didn't know was that I had moved the majority of our savings long before she ever touched it. Veronica had always underestimated me. She saw me as predictable, as a man who would never see the betrayal coming. But I had. Months ago, I sat in Adam's office, my lawyer and an old friend, laying everything out. "She's slipping away," I had admitted to him. "She doesn't even bother hiding it anymore." Adam had folded his hands, leaning back in his chair. "Then don't waste time being emotional, Eric. Protect yourself first. Move your assets. Document everything. And when she makes her move, be ready." So I had. I went through every financial record, every bank account, every property agreement. Anything with her name on it? Gone. She had no idea that, legally, she owned nothing. The house? In my name alone. The business? She had never been listed as a partner. Even the credit cards she thought she had access to? They worked for a while, just enough for her to get comfortable. But in the days leading up to this, I had already shut them down. The moment she tried to use them for her grand escape, she'd find out the truth. I could almost hear the confusion in her voice when her payment got declined, because while she was packing her bags, smiling to herself, thinking she had destroyed me, I was sitting here, sipping my coffee, waiting for the inevitable. She thought she had played me. She didn't realize I had been playing her all along. I didn't need to check my phone to know what was coming next. First, silence. Then, frustration. Then, panic. It was always the same pattern. I had spent months watching the signs. At first they were subtle, things that could have been brushed off as coincidences. But once I started looking closer, I realized they weren't coincidences. They were warnings I had ignored for too long. It started with the late nights. Sorry, work ran late. Then it was the business trips. It's just a weekend conference, nothing exciting. Then came the credit card charges, small at first. A restaurant I didn't remember us eating at, a hotel that didn't make sense, a boutique store in a part of town Veronica never shopped in. I let it go for a while, watching, waiting. I didn't say anything because I needed more than just suspicion. I needed proof. So I started keeping track. Every charge, every transaction, every excuse. Then there were the little details, the ones that people like Veronica never thought mattered. Perfume I never smelled on her. Expensive, floral, seductive, but not for me. New dresses that stayed in the closet, price tags still attached, never worn around me. Phone calls where she'd step into another room lowering her voice. Then, the biggest clue, the necklace. A few weeks ago, I walked into the kitchen and saw a receipt on the counter. An expensive jewelry store. A necklace worth almost $2,000. I never saw it on her, not once. Veronica never bought jewelry without showing it off. If she wasn't wearing it around me, then who was it really for? Maybe it was for Brandon. Maybe it was for the new life she was already planning. I didn't ask. I didn't confront her. Instead, I took the receipt and added it to my file. Because by that point, I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was building a case. Veronica didn't just check out of our marriage overnight. She had been gone for a long time. When her text finally arrived, it wasn't shocking. It was just confirmation. It was just the last piece of the puzzle falling into place. It took about an hour before the first message came. Eric, what happened to the credit card? I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the bitterness settle on my tongue. Here we go. A few minutes later, the airline won't take my payment. What did you do? Then, Eric, are you serious? My hotel booking was canceled? What the hell? I didn't respond. I could picture her at the airport, standing there in her overpriced designer outfit, expensive luggage beside her, fumbling with her phone as her perfect plan crumbled. Reality was hitting her hard. She had been so sure she had outplayed me. She had taken the money, booked the flights, set up her little escape with Brandon, never once considering that I might have been ahead of her the entire time. Now, her carefully crafted fantasy was turning to ash right in front of her eyes. Then came the calls. The first was from Diane, Veronica's mother. I let it ring twice before answering, already knowing exactly how this conversation was going to go. Eric, I just spoke to Veronica. She's in a terrible situation. She said you froze all the accounts. Is that true? I sighed. I almost laughed. Veronica, of course, had left out a few key details. Did she tell you she took all our money first? Silence. Did she mention Brandon? A pause. She just said you were being unreasonable. I cut her off. Diane, your daughter stole from me and ran off with another man. The only thing I did was make sure she didn't get to enjoy it. Silence again, this time longer. Finally, a week. I didn't know. I shook my head. Now you do. And I hung up. I set my phone down, leaned back in my chair and exhaled. That was just the beginning. I knew the next calls would come. Veronica wasn't done yet, but neither was I. By that evening, Veronica's messages had changed tone. Gone was the arrogance. Gone was the smugness. Now, desperation. Eric, please, just let me use one of the accounts. I'm stranded. I need help. I set my phone down without responding. She wasn't asking out of remorse. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry that her plan had failed. 10 minutes later, fine, keep the house. I just need something to get by. Don't be cruel. Cruel? That word made me laugh. This from the same woman who emptied our savings, maxed out my cards, and left me for some kid barely old enough to rent a car? I imagined her sitting in some crappy airport lounge checking her messages every few seconds, hoping I'd cave, hoping I'd send her some money, tell her we could figure something out. No. She had made her choice. Now she had to live with it. Then came the call. Rachel, Veronica's best friend. The same Rachel who used to side-eye me at dinners, as if I was the bad guy every time Veronica wanted something extravagant and I questioned it. I let it ring. Twice. Then I answered. What? Rachel sighed dramatically. Eric, you need to stop this. Veronica is in trouble. I smirked. Oh, now you care about trouble? Come on, she's stranded. She has nowhere to go. Just let her use one of the accounts. She told me you locked her out of everything. I leaned back in my chair. Rachel, where was this concern when she was draining our accounts? When she was sneaking around? When she was lying to my face? Silence. That's different. No, it's not. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with them. I didn't wait for a response. I simply ended the call and set my phone down, smiling to myself. Now she was learning what it felt like to be truly alone. The legal battle was quick. Veronica walked into the courtroom dressed for sympathy, a beige dress, soft curls in her hair, and the kind of sad, doe-eyed expression that might have worked on a less prepared man. Not me. Her lawyer, some slick-suited guy named Greg, started spinning a beautiful story about how Veronica had been in a failing marriage, how she was pushed into a desperate situation, and how my financial abuse had left her with no choice but to take the money and leave. I almost laughed. Then it was Adam's turn. My lawyer, my insurance policy, the man who knew everything about Veronica's games before she even played them. Adam stood up calm, professional, and absolutely merciless. Your Honor, let's talk about financial abuse, Adam said, setting down a thick folder on the desk. Because my client has documented evidence that paints a very different picture. And then he tore her case apart. Every suspicious expense was printed, highlighted, and time-stamped. Every lie, every secret charge, every so-called business trip that was really just a weekend with Brandon was laid out in undeniable detail. The necklace receipt, the one I never saw on her neck, was presented along with all the other evidence of her deception. Adam moved with surgical precision, stripping away every layer of Veronica's lies until she was left exposed in front of the judge. Her lawyer was completely outmatched. He tried to push back, to argue, but there was no defense against cold, hard facts. By the time Adam was done, Veronica wasn't looking so sympathetic anymore. She was pale, stiff, gripping the edge of the table, staring straight ahead as if willing herself not to fall apart. The same woman who once laughed at my caution, who thought she was untouchable, now sat frozen, realizing just how wrong she had been. The judge cleared his throat and read the verdict. The house was legally mine. She had no claim to it. The money she stole? She was ordered to pay it back in full. She had spent thousands before she left, thinking she was taking me down with her, but she never realized the real money was out of her reach. And now, she had 30 days to return what she had taken. And if she didn't, legal consequences. I watched her take a slow, shaky breath as the reality sank in. Her great escape had turned into a nightmare. Her lawyer mumbled something to her, but I barely listened. I was already done with this. As I walked out of the courtroom, I heard Brandon, the little side piece she had risked everything for, mutter under his breath. So, what's the plan now? Veronica turned to him, eyes blazing. Shut up, Brandon, she snapped. I smirked. The cracks were already showing. And soon, everything she had built with her lies would come crashing down. News spread fast. People always talk, especially when a downfall is as spectacular as Veronica's. Mutual friends whispered about how she had walked into court with confidence and walked out with nothing. The same people who used to admire her for always knowing what she wanted now looked at her with pity, shaking their heads at how she had managed to destroy her own life. Brandon? He didn't last. The moment the money was gone, so was he. It wasn't immediate. He stuck around just long enough to pretend he wasn't using her, but it was clear he had no intention of struggling by her side. Without access to the funds she had stolen, she couldn't keep up the lifestyle he was attracted to. There were no more expensive dinners, no fancy weekend getaways, no impulsive shopping sprees. Just reality. And Brandon? He wasn't interested in that. I heard from someone, maybe Rachel, maybe one of Veronica's old friends, that they had a fight in a parking lot outside some dingy motel a few weeks after the court ruling. He was yelling, frustrated, and she was on the verge of tears, probably realizing for the first time that she had traded security for a fantasy that had already crumbled. He left her there, suitcase in hand, no car, no backup plan. Just like that, the person she thought was her future became another lesson in poor decisions. Within a few months, she had moved back into her childhood bedroom, back under her parents' roof, far from the California dream she had imagined. Diane and her father weren't exactly welcoming her back with open arms either. They weren't thrilled about the humiliation she had brought to the family name, and from what I heard, their patience wore thin quickly. She had burned too many bridges, told too many lies, and now she was stuck. Every now and then, someone would ask if I felt bad for her, if I regretted not helping, if I thought maybe I had been too harsh. But I didn't, because in the end, Veronica had played herself. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she was the mastermind, always one step ahead. She never saw checkmate coming. Thank you for watching.